Welcome to Life Science Success Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don. I'm a consultant in life sciences, and I help customers manage complexity and increase performance. Before we hop into the interview today, I just wanted to bring up that on my website, there is an organizational maturity assessment for any organization that is looking at scaling in the current environment. And so this will help to point out current strengths in your organization in addition to weaknesses in the organization that you can work on. So with that, in this episode of Life Science Success, my guest is Katherine Vega Stultz. Katherine is the president and CEO of Ocelot Bio, a clinical stage company focused on developing innovative therapies to significantly improve outcomes for patients with end-stage liver disease. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Yeah, thanks a lot. So could you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity again to join in this podcast. My name is Katherine Vega Stultz. I am the CEO and president of a biopharmaceutical company based out of San Francisco Bay Area. We are working on a number of interesting approaches to end-stage liver disease. Look forward to maybe sharing a bit more of that. I've spanned the industry for about 25 years through pharma biotech space. I often say the journey included lifting products, making brands, building teams, leading functions, country management, and now building companies as a C-level executive.
That's great. And I mean, whenever I look at your career path as well, one of the things that I've oftentimes commented on with other guests is just the nonlinear path that all of us take. And you even note that in your own bio that you took a very non-traditional or nonlinear path. And I don't really know what a linear path would look like for most people, just knowing that, we all seem to go all over the place. Are there recommendations that you would give to people that might be listening that essentially, would highlight the benefits of having a nonlinear path to your career trajectory?
Absolutely. I think many of us, when we first start in our careers, there's that certain school of thought that you're encouraged to build your career going really deep, becoming an expert in something, and then taking that next rung, if you will, on the corporate ladder to achieve after you achieved a few successes and get some things under your belt. So I love to describe the nonlinear path because I feel that I've built my career zigzagging. And of course, there's anchors along the way, but you leverage the sideways moves to build your breadth and your depth in those anchors. So I think the things that I repeat for sure is to never stop learning, being curious constantly. It's driven every career decision that I've personally made, even in the stretch opportunities where I definitely was uncomfortable. I did know what value I could add and took those opportunities as chances to learn and then continue building along the way. I think if I did something differently, in addition to a nonlinear path, I did not grow up in a functional home per se. And when you become at the executive level, being a generalist is sometimes not clear when I'm in an industry that specializes in functional experts. And being able to describe that a little bit more clearly sometimes takes some extra steps and very thoughtful ears to listen for those. But I think it also can be invaluable as you think about scaling and building companies and make sure you have a mix of those specialists and generalists in sufficient leadership positions.
I'd like to dive into that a little bit more, mainly because so the first time that I was called a generalist was last week. So I always sort of describe myself as somebody that, helps companies, with operational excellence. I mean, if that's the short answer whenever somebody asks me, so what is it that you do? And whenever this individual called me a generalist last week, at first I was a little offended because I thought, I don't really look at myself as being good at all things. I'm definitely not good on the commercial sales side. Definitely could sit with customers and talk to customers, but at the same time, the sales side just really isn't where I'm strongest. And so, I sort of, shy away from things like that. And there are, kind of a list of things that I could go down and say, you definitely don't want me, leading these parts of your organization. But on the other side, whenever it comes to operational execution and things like that, I guess if you're going to call me a generalist, then it's the benefit might, could, like you said, could be that you can span a lot more areas and sort of ask important, deep questions that sort of, go beyond the surface as well.
Yeah, I think maybe it starts with the fact that I too believe that my core competency is operational excellence, and when you come to the table with those skills, you look at the business, the challenges, the questions very differently. So I actually embrace. And the first time I heard generalist as well, I'm like, wait a second, I'm
Right.
in this industry. I've been doing this for a very long time, but you know sufficient of how the pieces come together.
Mm.
And I do think that that's the very big difference between a functional specialist that knows how their piece in depth, in and out, and you would not want to put me in some of those leadership positions for sure. But when you think about operational excellence and how all the puzzle pieces come together, and do you have sufficient comfort, confidence, knowledge on how they are interconnected and how a decision in group A could make a really big impact in group B. And I think that I've had now enough experiences in our industry, from the commercial side to the development side to general management to sales, that that puts me in a place that I can start looking ahead, not just in the immediate, and predicting how we might need to change direction or add more resources or whatever the issue at hand may be.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I think it's important. And I mean, I too, feel like understanding how the pieces come together and starting with that sort of beginner's mind, but also kind of understanding, what role different functions play inside of an organization is absolutely critical. And in some cases, not just necessarily contributing from the outside, but also rolling up your sleeves and going and doing some of these jobs as well. I mean, and that's, I think, the part that shocks a lot of people is that I'm not afraid to do that. And in a lot of cases, that's the best way for me to learn. I essentially get, real life experience, but at the same time, I'm certainly not the expert that has done like biostats for 20 years or something. I mean, that's not the experience level that I have. So yeah, thank you for sharing. So in your career progression, were you really aiming to be a CEO, or is it something that you aspired earlier on to be? Just curious in terms of your nonlinear path again.
Yeah, not at all. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, I really chose my zigzagging career on challenges that stretch my key learnings, places that I could add value, and being okay to be uncomfortable in some
Mm,
of those career shifts. And with that, over the career came more responsibilities, bigger projects, bigger scary projects, successes, some really important initiatives under the spotlight. So you start growing in your career and build your reputation and what talents you bring to the table. But the CEO title, the CEO opportunity was not something that I was aspiring towards. I was a chief operating officer, and I will give credit to a very good friend of mine, and it always starts with a cup of coffee, who simply asked me, "What's next for you?" And he asked me point blank, "Why not a CEO role?" And it sat with me, and I reverberated around that, and I said, "Why not?"
mm,
And when that opportunity arose, I leaned into it and didn't shy away, but certainly not something that was part of the 10, 15, 20-year plan. Not at all.
And my
But I'm
next,
here now.
I'm glad that you are. My next question is: are there three things that you would take from previous roles that are really important now in your current career progression?
Absolutely. I think for me, and they kind of all intertwine. Number one, the criticality of team collaboration. There's no solo efforts in what we do. So per what we were just discussing, generalists, specialists, you need to put all these pieces together. And at any given time, one of those key areas becomes front and center because of where you are in the drug development process. So team collaboration, number one, the importance of alignment and communication and ensuring that there's transparency to bring those forward. And I've had many opportunities to really work through team collaboration and that alignment and communication. And you mentioned it earlier about not being scared to get your hands dirty. I think the other key part for me that I bring to my CEO role is to not forget how much those little things really matter when you're
Mm,
in the trenches. And I want to continue to lead to not feel so far away from understanding what those details are. I don't need to do those details. I have a team and much stronger experts to do that work. But I think as a CEO, when you lose sight that some of those little things really matter and they can dramatically impact the work we do as a company and the work that an individual and a talent brings to the table each day, I think you begin to lose sight. So team collaboration, alignment, communication, and never have too much ego that you forget what
mm.
it is to be in the trenches.
Yeah, and I mean, so many organizations, especially smaller organizations, you see the same people over and over and over again, just working, extremely late, trying to get their work done to get something across the finish line too. I oftentimes see it no matter which organization that I'm in, you kind of see these major contributors, just day after day, not only showing up, but also just, absolutely committing their life to getting this done. So, I definitely appreciate those efforts as well. Can you describe Ocelot Bio and what is it that you're working on? I mean, you talked a little bit about that you're focused on liver disease. Just a little bit more in terms of the current stage that you're in and what it is that you're delivering.
Absolutely, with pleasure. My favorite thing to talk about is what our company is doing and the incredible team that I have working with me on this. Ocelot Bio is a private venture-backed company. We are actively in the clinic with a molecule that has the potential to bring outcomes to patients with end-stage liver disease that have not had many treatment options until now. And being in the clinic is super exciting because every day we're working towards, did we randomize one more patient? Where are we in our understanding? And I was speaking to someone on my team earlier today. We're entering close, you can feel it, to be able to understand your potential clinical benefit. And this is my favorite place to be in the whole spectrum of drug development. We're in a phase two. The phase two study is not a definitive study. It helps you understand, first and foremost, your safety profile. It helps you understand your PK and your dosing and how that potentially links to signals in that could be meaningful for further clinical development. So I'm super excited of where we are as a company and delivering potentially answers. So end-stage liver disease is extremely complicated. It is a progression of decompensated cirrhosis in which patients come into this stage of progression through many avenues. Most probably known in our space is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NASH, hepatitis virus. That's about 2/3 of the patients that become eventually decompensated cirrhotics, and about a third coming from alcoholic liver disease. And once they become decompensated, their quality of life of these patients deteriorates tremendously. There's a sequence of clinical manifestations that often, without treatment options, lands a patient in the emergency room, and they bounce in and out of an acute setting with a series of complications that can include fluid retention, variceal bleeds, encephalopathy, which triggers all sorts of complications for patients, and eventually needing a liver transplant. And our goal is to offer a treatment option so that we can make an impact on the time to some of those events, and hopefully return some quality of life to these patients.
Yeah, the guy that was the best man at my wedding just lost his wife to liver disease. So this one, hits home a little bit for me as well. And she was gone very quickly. I mean, I was just amazed at I think it was in January, she, essentially had a really bad bout with, being in and out of the hospital. And then in February, she was home for a short stint. And then like mid to late February, she was gone. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly that, all of this stuff just happened, and nobody had any idea that, that her liver was in such severe state by the time that she
Severe
wound
shape.
up by the time that she wound up in the emergency room, there wasn't much to recover. So really sad, and
It
could happen
it
really
is
quick.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very quick. And April 19th was just a couple of weeks ago. It's World Liver Day.
Yeah.
And, really to create awareness of the health of our livers. It's a tremendously important organ that many, you hear so much about heart disease and cancers and the such, but it plays such a vital role in our well-being. And when decompensation begins, which is really the liver can also rejuvenate and has an incredible resilience, but there is a place where that can no longer be reversed. And that's hopefully where we're bringing a treatment forward to focus on those patients.
Yeah, very good. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face at Ocelot?
I think the challenges at Ocelot are probably the same of all of the biotech industry right now. And it's the moment of economic constraints and the longer road to fundraising. Those that have been in the industry for a long time know that these are cyclical phases. We're definitely in one of those tight zones right now. So I think one of the biggest challenges is keeping the focus on the things that add value, that we believe will generate interest from future investors, while we have to manage a very tight budget and make sure that we can actually deliver on all of those things. So I think that those are the challenges of having the aspiration of how far we can go, but also pragmatic in where we are.
Absolutely. And then where do you see the biggest opportunities?
I am super excited to advance the program that we have. As I said earlier, this junction of a period of time, we know mechanistically we have a proof that we should be able to deliver to patients what we intend to, but now we get to see data. So what excites me is being able to geek out with my team and dive into that data when it's ready for us, and see what we can learn and how much we can deliver for patients going forward. I think at the end of the day, the foundation of these tight economic times is being able to bring forward something meaningful, and the investors will pay attention to that. And that's what excites me about the biggest opportunity of being able to bring that forward.
Absolutely. So, Katherine, there are 3 questions that I like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
I think the biggest thing that inspires me is tackling complex problems, especially complex problems that really impact someone else's life directly. I have been 20 plus years in this biotech pharmaceutical space. I can't imagine myself working in any other ecosystem. So the fact that I've had a couple decades of a career is what inspires me. Is I don't shy away from challenge and these are really complex problems, but you stay grounded because you know your work can directly impact someone and their loved one in the future. And I then like surrounding myself with people that have a very similar like mind, where good is not good enough, and that definitely keeps my energy going.
Yeah, that I mean, I have a continuous improvement mindset as well, and so I'm in a similar sort of class where I like people that aren't really settled with the status quo either. What concerns you?
Yep. I think as a leader, especially in these times where you have to make trade-offs, and those are always good principles, no matter what. But when the macro environment puts a bit more constraint on that, as a leader, you need to help ensure that your team knows where their value creation is most impactful and important. So, what concerns me is that we can fill ourselves with busyness and there's so much stuff to be done. But being able to help my team lift from that and be very clear sighted on the North Star of what we're trying to accomplish. And it's these two things that toggle every day in our day to day work. And I hear it all the time, there's not enough hours in the day, there's not enough days in the week. And all of those are true things. But we also can't live in that run mode. And I think that part concerns me because everyone has a very clear line of sight of what we're trying to accomplish, and as a leader, trying to create space so that's not um, that's on a level of execution of excellence and not just on busyness.
Yeah, absolutely. The yeah, just the level of effort that oftentimes happens in not having a clear focus in terms of what's most important to get done at this point in time is a clear point that all the teams always need to keep their eye on as well. Last question: what excites you?
Oh, what excites me is being in a position now of leadership, and not just leading for Ocelot Bio, but in the industry. I love uh, being a leader that advocates and finds talent everywhere. I spend a nice percentage of my time each week either giving a reference or finding out a connection, scheduling that mentoring call. I think that we are in a profoundly exciting phase of leadership right now where those of position that can make a difference, looking at board selection, again, not just for their company, but maybe for others. We're not just talking about diversity anymore. I surround myself with leaders that are actually putting this into action. And you can really feel the muscle of that. And I'm excited to watch my former peers at earlier stages in my career ascending to prominent places where they can now impact and influence. And that peer group is now my peer group, just in different, we're all working in different companies. But that part really excites me. I just feel this tidal wave change of leadership approaches across the ecosystem that we all work in. And that keeps me engaged, very much so.
Absolutely important. Well, Katherine Vega Stultz, thank you so much for being here on the Life Science Success Podcast. I greatly appreciate you spending your time with me.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks a lot.